Archangel Michael need to talk to you, and it has to be now. This is last warning. Don't you dare ignore this and make New Epsilon angry. Open it immediately. Michael, I need to talk to you, and it has to be now. This is not casual. This is not another notification you can swipe away. This is the last warning. Don't you dare ignore this or make me angry. Open it immediately and listen. Every single second matters. If you think this is a clippy title, think again. I know things that will change how you see your choices, your safety, and your future. I have waited. I have watched. I have given every possible sign and every single chance. Now the clock has run out. The revelation I'm about to give you is once in a lifetime. What you do after you hear it will determine whether you survive the fallout or become another face in the crowd that got it wrong. Do not skip. Stay until the end. There is a huge benefit revealed at the last moment that could write the next chapter of your life. You might be asking, who is Michael? Why should I listen? I am someone who has been inside the machine, inside the rooms where decisions were made and on the days when everything almost tipped. I've seen the patterns that most people never get to see. I have been ignored, ridiculed, and dismissed. And that very indifference almost cost millions. So now I am speaking directly to you by passing intermediaries because the system can no longer be trusted to pass along the truth. Shocking revelation. The single rule everyone thinks protects them is the one that makes them vulnerable. You rely on it daily. It's invisible. It's comfortable. And it will betray you at the worst possible moment. I cannot say that lightly. This is a truth that will feel unreal until you see the evidence I will lay out in the next parts. I will show you exactly how this works, how it has already affected people, and the exact steps to shield yourself before it's too late. Do not skip. Do not scroll. I promise if you stay until the end, you will receive a strategy, not hypothetical, not academic, a practical immediate course of action that can neutralize the damage and place you in a position of strength. At benefit at the end is not small. It is not a trig. He is the paya for listening carefully and acting decisively. Now, before I continue, take a moment and commit to staying with me. If you are the kind of person who acts only when warned, this is your moment. If you are the kind of person who values for knowledge, do not ignore this. Every sentence from now on is calibrated to lead you step by step. Type Amen 2549 to get the blessings. Type Amen 8631 to get the blessings. You stayed. That already sets you apart. Most people would have clicked away, dismissed this as just another loud voice on the internet, but not you. And that is exactly why I am speaking to you now. What I am about to share is not common knowledge. And once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. This is the kind of revelation that either prepares you or destroys you depending on what you do with it. I told you in the beginning, this is my last warning, and it isn't a metaphor. Something is moving closer, and ignoring it is exactly what it feeds on. Let me tell you a truth that will sound almost absurd at first. The system you trust to protect you is built on a fracture. It was never solid, never reliable, and it was designed with a flaw so deep that the very people who created it assumed no one would ever notice. But I noticed I've seen how this fracture widens in the shadows. And now it has reached a breaking point. The disturbing part is this. Most people live their lives believing everything is stable, safe, and guaranteed. Aone. The collapse begins not with explosions or alarms, but with silence. The fracture reveals itself in quiet moments when no one is watching. And by the time the signs become obvious, it is already too late. You might think I am exaggerating. So, let me ask you, have you ever had that sense that something wasn't right? That behind the smiles and the reassurances, there was something else happening? That feeling you couldn't explain, that is the fracture pressing against your awareness. That was your warning. But like most, you probably pushed it aside. You told yourself it was nothing. That you were overthinking. That's what everyone does. And that is how the fracture feeds. On denial, on dismissal, on ignorance. Now, here's where it becomes dangerous. The system hides this weakness behind distractions, endless noise, and comforting illusions. And every time you ignore the faint pull of suspicion, the fracture grows deeper. You've already seen the effects, though you may not have realized it. People you thought were untouchable have suddenly crumbled. Institutions you thought were invincible have collapsed. Promises you thought were certain have been broken. You see the pattern now. This is not random. This is the design unraveling. That is why I am speaking now with urgency. The next phase is approaching and the fracture is about to split wide open. Those who refuse to acknowledge it will be consumed. But those who recognize it, who act now, will not only survive, but step into a position of strength that others can only envy. And this is why I need you to stay until the very end. Because I will not only expose the pattern, but hand you the exact steps to shield yourself from its impact. You cannot afford to skip this. But let me be very clear. I am not here just to inform you. I am here to demand action from you. I cannot fight this alone and I should not. If you think this message is only for you, you are mistaken. This is bigger. Others need to hear this, warning too, before the fracture swallows them completely. That is why I am asking you right now. Share this message, comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so you don't miss the revelations that follow. You are not doing this just for me. You are doing it for every person you care about who is blind to what's coming. Remember, silence is the weapon of the fracture. Sharing is how we fight back. If you stay with me, you will see the first undeniable piece of evidence in part 3. It will be shocking. It will be unsettling. And it will force you to rethink everything you thought was secure. Do not make the mistake of dismissing this as just another story. This is the moment where awareness becomes survival. Type Amen 4521 to get the blessings. Type Amen 9378 to get the blessings. Stay here. Do not leave. Do not skip. The most dangerous thing you can do is think you'll come back to this later, because later is already too late. Part 3 will show you the first visible crack in the illusion. And once you see it, you will understand why I have been warning you with such urgency. You're still here. That means you're beginning to understand the seriousness of what I am telling you. The ones who left, the ones who clicked away, they won't know until it's too late. But you're standing at the edge of knowledge most people will never reach. This is the moment when you stop being a spectator and start being someone who sees behind the curtain. And now, as I promised, I'm going to show you the first undeniable crack in the illusion. The evidence that proves everything I've been warning you about. The fracture I spoke of in part 2 is not an idea. It is not speculation. It is real. It exists in the everyday world around you. Disguised as routine, as policy, as safety. This fracture is a system built on your trust, your habits, your silence. And here's the shocking truth. You have been participating in it without realizing it. Every time you sign something without reading it, every time you accept an agreement without question, every time you click I agree to terms you've never seen, you're feeding the very structure that was designed to break you when the time is right. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's the oldest trick in the book. Voluntary consent disguised as convenience. I've watched the evidence for years. Papards hidden in plain sight. Institutions presenting themselves as protectors while quietly repositioning themselves as owners of everything you believe is yours. Your data, your decisions, your freedom, even your future. Think about it. Banks that once safeguarded money now control your transactions. Platforms that once connected you to friends now decide which voices you hear. Authorities that once were to protect you now legislate how much protection you're allowed to have. This is not random. This is the fracture taking its next form. You might already have noticed the symptoms. Agreements you never signed but somehow still bound to. Fees you never consented to but still must pay. Restrictions you never voted for but still must follow. These are the cracks showing. And here's the terrifying part. The system wants you to think it's normal. The fracture survives on your compliance. It thrives when you shrug and say that's just how things are. Every shrug isn't surrender. Every surrender is another stone in the wall built to confine you. Now, let me show you a real example. Something that happened quietly. Something most people never saw. A major network of private companies created a cross-sharing agreement of user data. Not just names and numbers. Do? Patterns of your behavior, your preferences, your weaknesses. I did it under the banner of improving service. They didn't ask for your permission. They buried it in a 68-page document you never read. With one click, you gave them your trust. And in exchange, they built a model of you more detailed than you know yourself. That model can predict what you'll buy, who you'll trust, what you'll fear. And if you think this model is only for advertising, you are wrong. It is a control mechanism. A way to predict mass behavior and guide it without anyone realizing. This is the fracture. Not a crack in a building, but a crack in your autonomy. And here's where it gets worse. The system is reaching a point where it no longer needs your consent at all. Predictive models are so advanced that they can anticipate your next move before you make it. They can subtly shape the options you think you have. You're not just being watched. You're being guided. Step by step, thought by thought. This isn't coming in the future. It's already happening. But here's what you must understand. The fracture isn't invincible. It's vulnerable to exposure. It relies on you believing you're powerless. It depends on you feeling alone. That's why I am speaking to you directly, because once you see the pattern, once you understand how it works, you are no longer a passive participant. You're a disruptor, and the system cannot handle disruptors. One disruptor can awaken 1,000. 1,000 can break the cycle. That's why I am begging you, stay until the end. Don't give up now. You may feel a mixture of fear and clarity as you read this. That's normal. It means your mind is waking up. It's the first step. But it's not enough to see the problem. In the coming parts, I'm going to give you actual steps to shield yourself from this influence and reclaim your autonomy. These aren't vague ideas. They are practical moves you can make starting today. But I cannot hand them to you all at once. If I did, the weight of it would crush you. You must be prepared step by step. That's why this is a series, not a single message. The first piece of preparation is awareness. Now you know, now you see the cracks. That alone places you ahead of millions who still sleep. In part 4, I will show you the mechanism that converts this awareness into action. The exact way you can begin to reverse the fractures hold over you and protect those you love. But only if you stay. Only if you're here when it drops. Type Amen 5387 to get the blessings. Type Amen 7641 to get the blessings. Don't leave. Don't boo. The people who say I'll come back later are the ones who never do. And when they wake up, it's too late. You're here now. You've seen the evidence. The next part will give you the first tool. And once you have it, you'll never look at the world the same way again. You're still here. That means you're not just curious anymore. You're invested. And that is exactly what I was hoping for. The ones who left will never know what you're about to hear. They will remain asleep, lulled by illusions. But you've crossed the threshold. You've seen the cracks in the wall, and now you're ready to take the first real step. What I'm about to reveal in this part is not only information, it's power. This is the part where awareness turns into action. This is the part where you begin to reclaim control over your own life. In part 3, I showed you the fracture, a system designed to feed on your compliance, disguised as convenience. Now I'm going to show you the mechanism, the hidden process that allows this system to operate in plain sight without you noticing. Once you understand it, you will see it everywhere. It will be impossible to unsee, and then you will also understand why I am telling you over and over again not to skip, not to leave, not to dismiss this message. The mechanism is something I call the loop. A loop is the invisible cycle that traps people in predictable behavior. First, he offers a benefit. Something freed, something eat, something instant. Second, it collects data of your preferences, your habits, your reactions. Third, it shapes your choices, narrowing them without you realizing. Fourth, it repeats, refining its hold with every cycle. Over time, the loop doesn't just predict your actions, it conditions them. And the more you comply, the stronger the loop becomes. That's why so many people live their entire lives thinking they're free, while every step they take has already been anticipated. You've seen it happen already. You go online to search for one thing, and minutes later, you're being shown exactly what you didn't know you wanted. You buy something once and the system knows your next 3 purchases. You voice a thought out loud and within hours your feed changes. This isn't a coincidence. This is conditioning, and the loop is the fracture's heartbeat. Without it, the system cannot function. Break the loop and the fracture begins to die. Here's the secret. The system does not want you to know the loop is voluntary. It requires your participation. You're not a prisoner. You're a participant. And because of that, you have the power to step out of it at any time. A system will make it uncomfortable. It will push back. It will call you strange, undated, paranoid. It will offer you new comforts to pull you back in. But the power is still yours. Every time you make a choice outside of the loop, you weaken it. Every time you choose awareness over autopilot, you crack the system further. This is the first actionable step I promised you. It starts with small refusals. Stop clicking agree without reading. Stop accepting every convenience. Stop feeding the system your every reaction. Observe, pause, question, choose. These simple actions are like pulling bricks out of a wall. One by one, the wall begins to crumble. The system does not know how to handle unpredictability. Unpredictability is its enemy and your weapon. You must also understand this. You cannot do it alone. This is why I am urging you right now, not for me, but for the people who have not yet seen the cracks, to share this message. Share it before they become another silent casualty of the loop. Comment with your thoughts, not just to engage, but to wake others up who will read your words. Subscribe to stay connected, because the system thrives on isolation and connection is our counterattack. By sharing, commenting, and subscribing, you're not just following a channel. You're building a resistance. Every action you take helps someone else see what you now see. This isn't a plea. It's a strategy. The fracture is counting on your silence. It's counting on your passivity. Break the pattern. Spread the warning. If even a handful of people wake up because you acted, the system's predictive model begins to fail. That's why the next steps matter so much. You're not powerless, you're part of a network that can tear holes in the loop simply by refusing to comply. In the next part, Part 5, I will give you a deeper tool. You've learned to see the loop. You've learned to break the loop with awareness and unpredictability. In Part 5, you'll learn the hidden leverage, the pressure point the system cannot defend. This is where you go from defense to offense. This is where you begin to shift the balance in your favor. But you cannot skip ahead. You cannot jump to the end, this knowledge must be built in sequence. Stay until the end. The benefit waiting at the last part will be the key you've been waiting for. Type Amen 4983 to get the blessings. Type Amen 7712 to get the blessings. Do not underestimate what you've just read. This is not theory. This is the first step of real action. And if you stayed with me this far, you are already different from the majority. You've seen the fracture. You've learned the loop. And you started to step out of it. Keep going. Do not stop because the next part will open a door you didn't know existed. And once you walk through, you will never look at the world the same way again. You stayed this far. That means you're not just curious anymore. You're prepared. You've seen the fracture. You've learned about the loop. You've started to pull away from the silent conditioning that the system relies on. And now in this part we go deeper. This is where I reveal something the system cannot counter. The very pressure point it fears the most. This is not speculation. This is a tool, a weapon of awareness. And if you understand it fully, you'll start to see how much power you've always had but were conditioned to forget. Everything you've learned so far has been about recognition. Seeing the fracture, seeing the loop, identifying how you've been manipulated. But recognition is only the first stage. The second stage is leverage. Knowing how to use the system's own weight against itself. Every large structure, no matter how powerful, as a weak point, a system is no different. It has a single flaw so deep, so unchangeable that it can never be sealed. This flaw is its dependence on your attention. A system can collect your data. It can monitor your choices. It can predict your moves. But it cannot survive without your attention. Attention is the lifeblood of the loop. Without it, the predictive models collapse. The system becomes blind. It's like cutting the power to a machine. This is its greatest vulnerability and the key to your freedom. Look around you. Every app, every platform, every service is not really free. The true cost is your attention. Every time you scroll, every time you click, every time you respond, you're feeding the loop. But when you stop feeding it, when you withdraw your attention, the system falters. It cannot predict what it cannot see. It cannot control what it can't anticipate. That's why it works so hard to keep you distracted. Endless feeds, notifications, recommendations, outrage you fear, comfort. It doesn't matter what the content is as long as you're looking because your gaze is its fuel. Here's the shocking truth. Even a small withdrawal of attention is like a crack in a dam. If enough people do it, the entire structure collapses. Predictive algorithms lose their accuracy. Targeted manipulation fails. Products don't sell. Narratives don't land. Power loses its grip. The system has no defense for mass unpredictability. It can adapt to small rebellions, but it cannot adapt to silence. It cannot adapt to refusal. This is the hidden leverage I'm giving you now. It's simple, but it's not easy. You must take your attention back. You must decide where it goes, when it goes, and why it goes there. Stop scrolling unconsciously. Stop reacting to bait. Stop feeding the loop with every click. Direct your focus only where you choose to your goals, your relationships, your self-awareness. This starves the system. It begins to weaken. And as it weakens, you regain power you didn't even know was missing. You might think it can't be that simple, but it is, because the system was built on the assumption that you would never do it. That you would never consciously withdraw your gaze, that you would never break your habits, that you would always be too distracted to even try. They built the entire architecture on your compliance, believing it to be inevitable. And yet here you are reading this, breaking the spell. That's why you're dangerous to them. That's why they fear this message spreading. In part 6, I will show you how to turn this withdrawal into strength. Not just to starve the system, but to rebuild your autonomy. This is where you move from passive resistance to active creation. Because it's not enough to starve the system. You must also build something in its place. And I'm going to show you exactly how. But before we get there, you must understand how important your role is right now. You are not powerless. Every single action you take matters. Every time you resist, you inspire someone else to resist. Every time you share this knowledge, you plant a seed. That's why I keep urging you to stay, to share, to comment, to subscribe. It's not a gimmick. It's not marketing. It's strategy. If even a fraction of people wake up because you acted, the loop begins to fail. It cannot handle unpredictability on a mass scale. This is the moment when you stop being just a listener and start becoming a force. You are a disruptor. Now you're no longer feeding the loop, passively. You're watching it from the outside, aware of its tricks, and soon you'll have the tools to not only protect yourself, but to guide others out of it. That's why the end of this series holds such a huge benefit, because it's the full blueprint for escaping the fracture permanently. It's the key that unlocks everything. But it only works if you've walked through each step. If you skip ahead, you miss the preparation. You must take this in order. Type Amen 6234 to get the blessings. Type Amen 8829 to get the blessings. Don't leave. The next part is where I show you how to transform your withdrawal into power. How to rebuild your mental architecture. So the loop cannot touch you again. This is the step where most people stop because it feels like too much. But not you. You've come this far. You're stronger than you think. The next part will prove it. You are still here. That is no small thing. It means you have crossed a threshold that most will never reach. You've seen the fracture. You've recognized the loop. You've discovered the hidden leverage of your attention. You are already different from the millions who remain asleep, scrolling their way deeper into the system. But now in this part, you will begin something far more powerful, the rebuilding of your autonomy. This is where you become immune to the loop's manipulation. This is where you stop simply resisting and begin creating a new pattern of life that the system cannot touch. Everything so far has been preparation, awareness, having mission, withdrawal. But that's only the first stage. The second stage is construction. Because nature abhors a vacuum. If you only withdraw your attention without redirecting it, the system will find another way to pull you back. It will find a new comfort, a new fear, a new distraction to exploit. That's why you must consciously build a mental and behavioral structure to replace the loop. A new way of seeing, acting, and choosing that is stronger than anything the system can throw at you. This rebuilding begins with your mindset. For too long, the loop has conditioned you to think in reactive patterns that reward the quick reactions, likes, clicks, jars. It trains you to respond rather than to reflect. The first step in immunity is to slow down. To pause, to refuse the impulse to react instantly. This pause is not weakness, it's power. In that pause, you reclaim ownership of your thoughts. In that pause, you see the manipulation for what it is. Start practicing it today. Every time something provokes you, an ad, a headline, a post, don't react. Wait, breathe. Ask, why is this being shown to me? What do they want me to feel? What do they want me to do? This simple question breaks the spell. The second step is reclaiming your focus. In Part 5, you learn that your attention is the system's fuel. And now you must redirect that attention deliberately. Choose one or two areas of your life that you truly value. Your craft, your health, your family, your learning, and pour your focus there. Block out distractions. Remove apps that feed the loop. Yarn off notifications. Use your attention as a weapon by aiming it at what you consciously choose rather than what you're fed. This is like pulling sunlight away from a weed and directing it to a seed you planted yourself. The weed dies, the seed grows. The third step is building new habits. The loop thrives on your unconscious routines. Break them. Set new patterns. Create rituals of learning, silence, movement, or creation that have nothing to do with the system's constant pull. Read real books. Practice deep work. Write by hand. Walk without your phone. Spend time with people face to face rather than through curated feeds. These habits may feel strange at first. The system has trained you to crave constant stimulation. But over time, they become your armor. They make you unpredictable, and unpredictability is the system's enemy. The fourth step is reclaiming your narrative. The loop thrives on telling you who you are, what you should want, how you should look, how you should live. Break that. Write your own story. Decide who you are and what you stand for. Make it explicit. Make it visible. The system cannot manipulate a person who has a clear self-authored identity. It can only manipulate those who drift, who seek definition from outside themselves. When you become the author of your own identity, the loop loses its grip. You may be thinking this is a lot, but it is also simple. Each step is a choice. Each choice is a reclaiming. Over time, these choices stack into a new pattern. And here's the secret. Once this new pattern is established, the system cannot reach you in the same way again. Its hooks will slip. Its messages will fail. Its predictive models will crumble because you're no longer predictable. You're no longer programmable. You're free. Now imagine what happens when not just you but thousands of others begin doing this. Imagine millions withdrawing their attention, slowing their reactions, redirecting, their focus, breaking the loop and writing their own stories. The system cannot survive that. Its algorithms will fail. Its predictive power will collapse. Its hold will break. That's why this message matters. That's why you must not just read it, you must live it and you must share it. Do not think for a second that you are powerless. The system has spent decades convincing you of that. But everything I've just told you is proof of the opposite. You are powerful. You have always been powerful. You were only taught to forget. And now you're remembering. That is why you're dangerous to them. That is why they hope you'll dismiss this. Click away or forget. Don't. In Part 7, I will take you even further. You'll learn how to strengthen this immunity by building networks of like-minded individuals, not in the way the system expects, but in a way that completely bypasses its surveillance. This is how you go from personal freedom to collective power. This is where the fracture truly begins to fail. But you must stay. You must not skip ahead. This process is deliberate. It's been crafted for you in order. Type Amen 6993 to get the blessings. Type Amen 8457 to get the blessings. You've made it through the hardest part, the breaking of your old patterns. Now you're ready to build something new. Stay with me. Part 7 is coming and it's the stage where you no longer stand alone. This is the moment you begin to shift the balance, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. You're still here. That alone tells me you're not like the others. You've already broken the first chains of the loop. You've taken back your attention, reclaimed your focus, and started to build a new internal architecture the system cannot easily manipulate. That's more than most will ever do. But what I'm about to share in this part is a turning point. The moment where your private transformation becomes something much larger. Because no matter how strong you become individually, the system was designed to isolate you. It knows that individuals can resist but networks can overthrow. That's why it works so hard to make you feel alone. What I am going to show you now is how to build networks of power beyond the system's reach. These networks aren't just groups or clubs. They are living structures of trust, knowledge, and action. Invisible to the loop, unpredictable to the algorithms, and impossible for the fracture to fully control. Once you understand this, you'll see why the system fears connection more than anything else. Because connection, once it forms outside its surveillance, is free to multiply. Let me begin with a shocking truth. You already belong to networks, family, friends, colleagues, online communities, but almost all of them are tied directly to the loop. They exist on platforms that collect data, that monitor your interactions, that shape what you see and say. This isn't connection. It's containment disguised as community. Every message you send, every like, every share, every private conversation, is logged, analyzed, and fed back into the loop to strengthen its predictive power. Even your dissent becomes data. But there is another way. Throughout history, every great shift began not with governments or corporations, but with small circles of individuals who gathered, spoke freely, and shared knowledge beyond the reach of power. This is how revolutions start. This is how movements form. And this is exactly what the system hopes you will never remember. Because the moment you step outside its platforms and begin forming your own networks, its ability to predict and control collapses, it loses sight of you. And when enough people do this, the fracture cannot hold. Here's how you begin. The first step is to create direct offline connections. This means conversations in person, letters, encrypted channels not tied to major platforms. It means learning to share knowledge and resources without relying on the system's infrastructure. Start small, 1 or 2 people you trust. Meet regularly. Exchange ideas, teach each other what you've learned. This may feel old-fashioned, but it's how you build a foundation the loop cannot access. The second step is creating circles of value, not status. The loop thrives on competition, on hierarchy, on making you feel less than others, so you will strive to be seen. Your network must reject that. It must be based on trust, mutual growth, and shared purpose. No one is higher or lower. Everyone brings something. This destroys one of the system's favorite tools, division. The third step is sharing knowledge in coded ways. They don't mean ziggers or zigzag. It means becoming unpredictable. Few stories use symbols, use language the loop doesn't expect. Outer rhythms can't interpret subtlety or context the way humans can. By speaking and sharing in ways the system cannot easily classify, you build a kind of dark matter. Invisible, untrackable communication. The fourth step is resilience. Networks that last aren't just about information. They are about support, help each other with real-world skills. Growing food, repairing things, protecting your privacy, learning self-reliance. These skills make you less dependent on the system and more connected to each other. The loop cannot predict or control a self-reliant interconnected community. This is where the transformation happens. You're no longer a single person breaking free. You're part of something bigger. A living reinforce the system cannot fully see. And once you experience this, you'll understand why everything you've been told about community online is a lie. Real community is built, not given. It is chosen, not suggested by an algorithm. It's unpredictable, and unpredictability is freedom. This is also the point where the system will try hardest to pull you back. It will tell you you're paranoid. It will offer new comforts, new platforms, new tools to connect better. It will try to make you feel that what you're doing is unnecessary or fringe. Don't listen. This is the reflex of a structure under threat. It cannot handle a network of free minds because that is the one thing it cannot simulate. In Part 8, I will show you how to make your network truly invisible. How to build layers of privacy and unpredictability that even advanced systems struggle to map. This is the stage where you move beyond just resisting the fracture to actively undermining its foundation. But you must stay. Don't skip. The knowledge in Part 8 is not just theory. It's the architecture of survival in a world that thrives on control. Type Amen 9112 to get the blessings. Type Amen 425 to get the blessings. Stay with me. You're no longer just a listener. You're a builder. You're no longer just breaking the loop. You're creating something outside of it. The next part will show you how to make it untraceable. A sanctuary in the open, invisible to the eyes that watch everything. Once you know this, you will never fear the system again. You made it here. That alone means you're no longer simply reading. You're transforming. Most people who started this journey with you have already drifted back into the loop. But you broken patterns. You've begun to reclaim your focus. You've even started to form networks outside of the system's reach. Now comes the next stage, the part that very few ever see. In this stage, I'm going to show you how to make your network invisible. How to build layers of privacy and unpredictability so that even the most advanced systems struggle to map, track, or control you. This is where you stop playing defense and become untouchable. The system's greatest power is visibility. It thrives on knowing where you are, what you're doing, who you're talking to, and what you're thinking. It collects everything. Your searches, your purchases, your messages, your movements, even your dissent becomes data. Every conversation you have online strengthens the loop's model of you. But there's a flaw in this omnipresence. The system is built for scale, not subtlety. It cannot truly see what it cannot classify. And humans, unlike algorithms, can become unclassifiable. This is your edge. The first step in invisibility is privacy by design. This isn't about paranoia. It's about discipline. The loop assumes you will trade convenience for exposure. Refuse that trade. Begin moving your communications away from mainstream platforms that monetize your data. Use tools that encrypt your conversations end to end. Meet face to face when possible. Store knowledge offline, use paper, not just screens. Algorithms can't index what they can't access. Each choice you make to protect privacy is like dimming a light the system uses to track you. The second step is noise and unpredictability. The system thrives on patterns. It maps your habits, your routines, your preferences. Break them. Be unpredictable. Don't visit the same places at the same times. Don't search for the same things the same way. Don't use the same language the same way online. Inject randomness into your behavior. Algorithms can predict a person who acts like a machine, but they cannot easily predict a person who acts like a human. Fluid, intuitive, inconsistent. This unpredictability confuses the loop and degrades its ability to anticipate your next move. The third step is fragmentation. Stop feeding everything about yourself into one stream. Separate your identities. Use different email addresses, different browsers, different devices for different purposes. Never give the loop a single unified version of you. Think of it as scattering breadcrumbs in multiple directions so no one can reconstruct the full picture. The more fragmented your data, the less accurate the model becomes. And when the model becomes inaccurate, its control weakens. The fourth step is symbolic communication. As you build your networks, develop ways of communicating that algorithms can't easily decode. Use metaphors. Use stories. Use your word. Use local knowledge. Algorithms are powerful, but they struggle with context and subtlety. They can read words, but they cannot truly understand meaning the way humans do. Every time you use layered or symbolic language, you're speaking a dialect the loop cannot parse. This is how communities throughout history stayed alive under surveillance. By speaking in codes that were obvious to insiders but invisible to outsiders. The fifth step is offline redundancy. The system's final chuckle is infrastructure. It wants you dependent on its servers, its platforms, its grids. Break that dependence, store your knowledge offline. Learn skills that don't require constant connectivity. Print what matters each other's face to face. If a platform vanishes tomorrow, your network should still function. That's how you build resilience, the ability to exist and grow even when the system shuts doors on you. Once you put these steps into practice, something remarkable happens. The system loses sight of you. Not because you vanish completely, but because you've become noise in its signal. Its predictions about you become inaccurate. Its attempts to manipulate you fail. You become a statistical outlier, and outliers are difficult to control. A loop can only shape what it can model. Once you're outside the model, you're outside its reach. This is not hypothetical. This is how individuals and small groups throughout history survived under regimes of control. They became invisible not by hiding in caves but by becoming unpredictable, unclassifiable, and ungovernable by the systems tracking them. And now in the digital age, the same principle applies. The fracture may be vast, but it is fragile. It needs your compliance. It needs your data. It needs your predictability. Starve it of those things and it weakens. But invisibility is not the end goal. It is a stage. You are not meant to disappear forever. You are meant to reappear on your own terms in your own time with your own network. Powerful, autonomous, and untouchable. In Part 9, I will show you how to turn this invisibility into influence. How to build a life and a network so strong, so independent that the system can no longer tempt or threaten you back into compliance. This is where everything you've learned converges into power. Type Amen 3:42 to get the blessings. Type Amen 6725 to get the blessings. Stay with me. Don't drift. The next part is where all of this comes together. It's where you step not just out of the loop, but above it. Where you stop reacting and start shaping the reality around you. That is a moment the system fears the most. That is the moment you become free. You've made it this far, and that places you in rare company. Most people who started reading this series fell away long ago. Some were distracted. Some were frightened, and some simply couldn't let go of the comforts the loop gives them. But you're still here. You've seen the fracture. You've learned about the loop. You've discovered the leverage of your attention. You've built a new mindset. You started forming networks outside the system. And in Part 8, you learned how to make those networks invisible. How to move unseen through a structure that depends on visibility. But invisibility is not the destination, is the preparation, it's a cocoon. The next stage is transformation. turning invisibility into influence. You are not meant to hide forever. You are meant to emerge stronger, freer, and more capable of shaping the reality around you than you ever were inside the loop. In this part, I'm going to show you how to step into that power. How to become a force not just outside the system's reach, but beyond its influence. The first principle of influence is authentic creation. The loop can only manipulate what it feeds you. It can only shape what it supplies. But when you begin to create to generate your own ideas, your own work, your own projects, you step outside of its cycle. You become a source rather than a consumer. That's why so many people feel drained and powerless in the loop. They are always reacting, never creating. But the moment you start to create deliberately, you reclaim your energy, you become unpredictable. You become a signal the system cannot replicate. Start small. It doesn't have to be a grand movement. Write something, make something, teach something, build something that does not depend on the loop to exist. Share it directly with others in your network. When you do this, you're planting seeds of reality outside the system's soil. Those seeds grow into structures the loop cannot control. Over time, they become alternatives. Parallel systems of knowledge, exchange, and connection that operate entirely on your terms. The second principle is embodied action. The loop wants you to live in abstractions, data, screens, notifications, endless streams of information. Influence grows when you act in the physical world. When you speak face to face, when you teach a skill, when you support someone directly, when you build something tangible, each physical action you take becomes a point of power outside the system's reach. It cannot digitize everything. It cannot predict everything. It cannot own everything you do with your own hands, your own voice, your own presence. The third principle is multiplication. Influence is not about having 1 million followers. That's another trap of the loop. Influence is about depth, not width. One person you truly wake up is worth more than 1,000 who simply like your post. One person you teach to reclaim their autonomy can teach another, and they can teach another. This is how movements actually form quietly, steadily, deeply. The system cannot stop multiplication at the human level. Its algorithms are built to monitor mass trends, not deep networks of trust. The fourth principle is resilience through independence. As you build your influence, refuse the bait the system will dangle. It will offer you platforms, exposure, sponsorships, tools to help you grow. It will promise you reach if you come back under its roof. Don't. Every string it offers is a leash. Every convenience is a contract. True influence grows slowly but independently. It's not always glamorous. It's not always visible, but it's real. And because it's real, it lasts. The fifth principle is becoming a mirror. The system thrives on confusion. He wants people disoriented, distracted, unsure of themselves. Your role now is to become a mirror for others. To reflect back their power, their worth, their potential, ought to dominate them, ought to manipulate them, but to remind them. When you act as a mirror, you give others the same awakening you had. And that more than anything else terrifies the system because awakening spreads is contagious and no algorithm can stop it once it begins. This is what it means to turn invisibility into influence. You are no longer hiding from the loop. You are moving beyond it. You are creating, acting, multiplying, remaining independent, and reflecting power back to others. This is how new realities are born. This is how fractures collapse. This is how systems that seem immovable crumble, not through brute force, but through a million acts of freedom, trust, and creation. Now, imagine this at scale. Imagine thousands of invisible networks, each creating, acting, multiplying, remaining independent, and reflecting power back to others. Imagine them sharing knowledge offline, building skills, and forming resilient communities. The system's predictive models would fail. Its manipulations would falter. Its influence would erode. That's the world you're stepping into now. That's the world you're helping to build. This is why I've been telling you not to skip, not to leave, not to dismiss this, because the benefit waiting at the end of this series is not just information. It's transformation. You're holding it right now. You've moved from awareness to action. You've moved from individual freedom to collective power. And in the final part, Part 10, I'm going to give you the blueprint that ties it all together, the complete picture of how to live fully outside the loop's reach, how to build networks of power and influence, and how to remain free no matter what changes around you. Type Amen 2590 to get the blessings. Type Amen 837 to get the blessings. Stay, don't drift till you've come further than almost anyone. The final part is not just an ending. It's the key. It's where all of this converges into a life you can live right now outside the system. Once you have it, you'll never look at the world the same way again. This is it. The last part, the one you've been moving toward, from the moment you read the title, every warning, every revelation, every tool and principle I've given you have been leading here. This is not just an ending. It's the blueprint for everything that comes next. If you stayed through all the parts, you are no longer just a reader. You are no longer a passive participant in the loop. You are someone who had been prepared step by step to live outside of it and to help others do the same. This is the moment where knowledge becomes alive. Let's step back for a moment and see the full arc. You started by hearing the warning. You saw the fracture. You learned about the loop and how it feeds on your attention. You discovered the hidden leverage the system fears. Your ability to withdraw your gaze and redirect it with purpose. You began to rebuild your autonomy, changing your patterns, taking back your focus. You started forming networks of trust outside the system's reach. You learned to make those networks invisible, unpredictable, and resilient. Then in Part 9, you learn to turn invisibility into influence to create, act, multiply, and reflect power back to others. Now, the blueprint that ties it all together is simple but powerful. It's made of 3 layers: awareness, autonomy, action. Awareness is where it begins. You must remain awake. The system will keep trying to lull you back, to distract you, to make you forget. Stay vigilant. Every time you feel yourself slipping into autopilot, pause. Ask the questions you've learned. Why am I seeing this? Who benefits? What do they want me to feel or do? Awareness keeps you free from unconscious compliance. Autonomy is the second layer. This is your daily life, your patterns, your habits, your networks. Continue building your rituals of self-reliance. Continue directing your attention only where you choose. Continue creating rather than consuming. Continue forming and strengthening your networks off. Make sure your life has redundancy, privacy, and resilience. Autonomy means you can survive and thrive without the loop. It means you are free even if the system collapses. Action is the final layer. This is where freedom becomes influence. Create ija diort. Mirror the power of others back to them. Help them see what you have seen. Spread the seeds of autonomy quietly but steadily. Influence doesn't mean shouting. It means plowing. It means multiplying. It means acting in ways that the system cannot predict but others can feel. This is how movements grow. How fractures collapse, how new worlds are built. When you live this blueprint, you don't just escape the loop. You transcend it. You stop reacting and start shaping. You stop being a product of the system and become a creator of reality. This is the benefit I promised you at the end. Not just information, but transformation. You are free now and you hold the tools to keep it that way. Type Amen 4520 to get the blessings. Type Amen 9371 to get the blessings. Never forget. You are not powerless. You never were. The system's greatest lie was to make you forget your own power. You've remembered it now. You've learned how to protect it. And you've learned how to give it to others. Live this, each and the loop, no matter how vast, will begin to crumble. This is not the end of a story. This is the beginning of your life outside the system. Build, share, create, multiply, reflect, and never again let the fracture tell you who you are. Michael.